Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Well, the gunman's live stream of the Christchurch mosque shootings was one of the most shocking aspects of last Friday's attack. Social media platforms immediately came under fire for not doing more to block such content. But even now that the actual video has been taken down, questions remain about the willingness of some of the world's biggest companies to engage with questions over their response to the attack and far-right extremism. Jane Deeth reports.
As the horror of what happened in Christchurch sinks in, still there are people trying to get the footage of the killings onto the internet. Facebook, where the suspect Brenton Tarrant broadcast the killings, says it's removed 1.5 million videos. But why couldn't it react in time to halt the horrific 17-minute live streaming of the massacre?
We've been asking to speak to Facebook's head of global affairs, Nick Clegg, since Friday, the day the attack happened. But the company has only been communicating via written statements, quoting a spokeswoman in New Zealand. Nobody from any continent has been prepared to come on camera and face questions.
Today, the government said technology firms were too late.
Mr. Speaker, social media platforms should be ashamed that they have enabled a terrorist to live stream this evil massacre and spread this mantra of hate to the whole world.
The government's promising proposals to shut down what it says are safe spaces where people can share sick views. When Brenton Tarrant announced his impending attack, it was advertised on 8chan, an anonymous message board which you might not have heard of. But in his video before he opened fire, Tarrant pointed people to the world's biggest video site, YouTube, and its richest star, PewDiePie.
I'm white. Can I make that comment? But I do think that's a problem.
He's had to deny allegations he's a racist. Close to 90 million people subscribe to his channel. He said he's absolutely sickened Brenton Tarrant uttered his name. At the weekend, swastikas and the message "subscribe to PewDiePie," Brenton Tarrant's exact words, appeared at a school in Oxford. Police are investigating. Google, which owns YouTube, says it's removed tens of thousands of videos and terminated hundreds of accounts, but there is much more work to do. This expert on political violence says the mainstream media, not just the internet, is guilty of giving far-right nationalists space compared to other extremists.
I don't think that this is something that is produced through social media space at all. This is leaking over from the mainstream. This is mainstream political discourse at this point. You know, Islamophobic rhetoric, anti-immigrant sentiments, you know, anti-women sentiments. These are not something that you're finding in the dark corners of the internet. These have been normalized in the biggest political campaigns of the last recent years.
In Stanwell in Surrey, a man's been arrested after a stabbing police have declared a terrorist incident.
Shouting out, all Muslims should be dead, kill all Muslims, white supremacy rules.
There have been other arrests over apparently racist references to the New Zealand attacks, in the street and online. We can probably expect more.
Well, joining me now is the Labour MP Jo Stevens, who's a member of the Digital Culture, Media and Sport Parliamentary Committee. The live streaming for 17 minutes, the uploading countless times of this horrific footage has shocked people. How urgently do you think governments around the world should respond?
This has been urgent for some time. I mean, the atrocities over the last few days have just shone a real light on this in a way that it hasn't done before. But we've been calling in Parliament here, as in our Digital Culture, Media and Sports Select Committee, for action from the government. And there's been calls for action all around the world. And I'm afraid that the age of self-regulation for big tech companies and social media companies has gone. You know, they've had their chance and they've blown it.
I mean, I have heard similar sentiments around the world, the US, the EU, the UK. I mean, the UK digital minister today said that 15 voluntary codes of practice have been agreed with online platforms since 2008. Why do you think it has taken so long for governments to arguably protect citizens better?
Well, I think the approach has been, it's almost like the whack-a-mole game. The social media companies will never do anything proactively, so they will only ever take action, and then they don't take very much action when something happens and they're forced into a position to do it. We've been waiting for the government to publish its online harms white paper for some time. Our committee published its interim report last summer, and we had a very poor response into our recommendations from government. We published another report just a few weeks ago, and now we need, we really do need some urgent action, because these companies, they're quite happy to take the plaudits and the profits, but they're never happy to accept the consequences of what their sprawling services are enabling.
Well, Facebook, YouTube would say that they are doing quite a lot. They're removing a lot of videos. I mean, is it unfair to blame online platforms for the filth that people want to put on them?
Well, they argue that they are not publishers. They refuse to be regulated in the way that other publishers, like broadcast media or print media, are, because they say they're not responsible for the content that's uploaded onto their platforms. But they do perform editing functions, so they did take stuff down, not quickly enough. So this argument that they're not publishers, I don't think holds. And so we now need to force them into a position where, and the recommendations that we've made include a statutory power for an independent regulator, with a code of ethics, with sanctions, legal powers if they're breached, and to make sure that where they do not follow those rules, that they suffer a heavy financial sanction, because I'm afraid with these companies, the only thing that will make them change their behaviour is if you hit their bottom line.
Is there a worry that if you bring this regulation in, and it looks as if around the world that's where we're heading, that these kind of horrific views will be driven underground and will actually be harder to keep track of?
Yes, but you've got to remember that these platforms have prided themselves on their innovation and the speed at which they can make technological changes. I mean, Facebook's motto is move fast and break things. Now, with that innovation has to come responsibility, and they need to look not just at what the end of what they want to do is, they need to look at the risks that path creates, and put measures in place to make sure that risk is mitigated.
Facebook's Mark Zuckerberg refused to come in front of your committee. We have not been able to interview anyone from Facebook for our programme. Is that smart or arrogant, do you think?
It's arrogant, it's contemptuous, and I'm afraid it's a pattern of behaviour that we've seen, particularly from Facebook, over the last 2 years. Refusal to have any scrutiny, refusal to give answers, and I think Mark Zuckerberg needs to seriously think about whether or not, his company should carry on as it is, or they should make major changes to it. I felt that the live streaming, they should have stopped uploads immediately. They knew what was happening. Never mind trying to take the content down. They should have shut off the mechanism for uploading until they had a way of sorting this out.
Jo Stevens, thanks very much.